I'm Deborah Fels, and as my colleague said, I'm actually director of the Inclusive Media and Design Center, which is my research area. However, I'm also a teacher. I have to be in the classroom. And so I've been playing around with gamification in my classes for a couple of years because I'm interested in alternative media. I'm interested in more inclusion, although it's for a different reason. And so I've been looking at gamification. How many people here in the audience are trying some concepts of gamification? And maybe for those of you who know what it is, you'll be able to. Anybody here trying some gamification? Okay. Anybody here trying some gamification with their learning management system? Or is that all, it's a separate thing? Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm trying to integrate our learning management system with the gamification work that we're trying to do. So mostly what we're going to do is I'm going to tell you about the work that I've been trying to do in my classes and giving you some ideas. Because gamification in the education sector tends to be fairly limited in its scope. And I've been trying to work with a different scope. So I'm going to give you my perspective. We've published a fair bit on this now. And so if you want details of student opinions and things like that, I can point you to the publications that we've done. So first of all, gamification, as opposed to games, is a little bit different in that it really applies objects that are present in games, and maybe even a small game mechanic, into a non-game setting, like a course. And the purpose of that is to try and increase motivation of students, increase more engagement, and the hope is that by doing that, students will perform better, although I'm not sure. The literature doesn't support that, but that's the hope. And by game objects, I mean things like leaderboards and point systems, and I run an in-course economy, a game economy, and rewards like badges and things like that. So those are pretty basic, simple things that you find in standard video games. And that's more or less what gamification in education has been restricted to. So one of the things that I look at when I'm trying to design gamification in my class is I want to take something else from games, in that we have different kinds of reasons that people play games. So there's, in the literature there's a range, but the basic ones are there's competitors. How many people here would identify as competitors? You like to play first-person shooters and those kind of games, right? Okay. There's a group, definitely. Then we have people who are explorers, and they like to play real-time strategy games. Any explorers here? A few. Good. And achievers. They like to win things, win points, no matter how it happens, right? Got some there. And socializers, they like to play things like Second Life, or where they're more into the networking opportunities that a game would have, playing games that are online games with a group of people. Anybody here do that? Staying up all night playing Second Life? Okay. And then, of course, we have different ways people learn, different methods that people use. So there's visual learners, or people who prefer their learning materials in a visual manner. Anybody here identify with that? Any arts people? Okay. Auditory learners, people who prefer their material delivered auditorily? None? I usually have a couple in my class. People who prefer text. That probably, we're the older crowd, so we probably like that. And then people who like to learn by doing things. Engineers, some of the artists. Yeah, that's me. I like kinesthetic learning. So we need to bring that into the classroom design when we're working on gamification. We can't just look at one thing because we like to be a competitor. We need to tailor our things. And so I've gamified this talk a little bit. And maybe you'll win an extra dessert or something. So on your right side there, maybe you could match the icons. And you can put this in a tweet if you'd like, to the different kinds of gamers that we have. I got 4 icons and 4 types of gamers. So you can write it down or put it in a tweet. And you got to keep your own score. You get 8 XP for that. Organizing. And we'll talk about what XP is in a minute. All right, so there's your typical learning pyramid, which we like to talk about, I suppose, when we're teaching. However, I don't know how many of us actually look at that after we've seen it for the first time and try and apply it to class. But I think gamification has the opportunity to address all of those in a gamified way. And I'm going to show you how we do that, how I do that. Okay. So I'm going to talk about 3 courses, I guess. The first one was not taught by me, was taught by one of my colleagues. We did this project together, Rob Batchko and Jagras Hodgson. And their course is called Participatory Media and Communication. And it's run in the Professional Communications faculty or department at Ryerson. And there are about 90 students. It's an elective. It's one of those kind of electives that everybody can take. Open elective, that's the wrong word, but it's an elective course that's available to other students at the university. So initially, when we planned our courses, we were going to gamify them entirely. That means getting rid of the grading system and replacing it with a experience point system like you would have in a video game. But they weren't allowed to do that because they were part-time instructors. And administration, how many people here are in the administration side of education? Okay. So they ran into administration who said, oh no, we can't change the conventional way of marking students because there's going to be appeals. I'm like, oh, all right. Well, so what's wrong with that? The students are still earning things, earning grades, and experience points get translated into letter grades fairly easily. So I didn't really understand the concern, but they were part-time instructors and didn't have the same sort of leverage I had as a full professor. So they couldn't do that. Instead, they were allowed to use their participation marks only to work with the gamification work. So they ended up having to do a lot of gamification that students would be rewarded with a chocolate bar rather than grades. And they had to work with a 10% window of actual grades. So they designed a game itself called Social Media Celebrity. And you can see there's 3 things that students were asked to do. They had solo quizzes every week. And those are the things that earned them points towards their participation marks. Adding in a randomness to how points are earned and assigned is a really fun thing to do when it comes to gaming. So there's a part of gaming that I advocate strongly for gamification is the notion of randomness. So we use dice, I use dice as well, to introduce this notion of randomness. And I'm going to show you for theirs what their dice rolls meant. And there we go. The dice rolling challenges earned them popularity points, and the mix of popularity points and XP combined to make winning teams, and they got chocolate bars as their reward. So here's an example quest. Again, it's using, so the course was, the topic was social media and how to use social media. And so here's a couple of the examples of the quests and how they earned XP. And this would have been done on a weekly basis. They had these quests to do. Okay. And I just want to show you the dice. Sorry, that's going to be a little bit small, but it's a 10-sided die that they used, and they would roll for each team, and that's how their points, what each die roll equaled. So if you rolled a 6, there's an errant tweet, and you got penalized. You lost popularity points if you rolled a 6. So that's the nice thing about randomness. Some of it's positive, some of it's negative, and it makes it more interesting and more fun. All right. And here's their leaderboard. This was in Desire to Learn LMS, and it was done manually. So they did keep a leaderboard. And some of the students liked the leaderboard, some didn't care or weren't interested in the leaderboard, and that is true. Competitors like leaderboards. Everybody else does not. So relying on a leaderboard to motivate students is not a good idea. It's okay to have one, but relying on it as your only gamification object is, I wouldn't recommend it. All right, so for my courses, I'm in the Faculty of Management at Ryerson, so my course is more business-oriented. And I've had about 50 students, maybe 60 students over 3 semesters, so I've had 3 tries at this gamification. And it changes every time because I'm not quite satisfied yet about what's going on. So this course is completely gamified. I only award XP, experience points. There are no grades in this course. We'll just leave it at that for a sec. So there's no percent. You can obviously calculate percents because things are out of a number of XP, but it's not, grades are not assigned as a percent like you would in sort of a standard course. And we're going to talk about what happened as a result of that. So I also run an in-game economy or an in-course economy, a secondary economy that students earn separately. And I found that this is a really important part of gamification, and it's a way better piece for motivating students than leaderboards and awards and things like that. So in this course, I use stock options as the in-course economy. And students earn stock options for all of the things that they do in the course. And they can use those stock options to buy. In this course, I call them bonus challenges, bonus assignments. But they don't get marks or they don't get XP for completing those assignments themselves. What they get, and ask me a question if you don't understand this. So they get an extra amount of XP that is added to their remaining assignments. All right, so maybe one assignment is worth 150 XP. They earn a certain number of XP for that assignment, and then I add 10 or 15 or 20 XP or whatever it is from their bonus assignment. Just straight to the grade or straight to the XP. And that's true, that will happen for everything that they do from the submission of that bonus assignment onwards. So it's a chance for them to level up, kind of call it a grade multiplier, but it's a leveling up idea. But they got to do some extra work for that. So over the 3 semesters, somewhere between 20 and 40% of the students have used this in-game economy. or in course economy. And a lot of them, in this particular course, they're learning some software. And the ones that are doing these bonus assignments are doing it because they're not just interested in adding more XP to their earnings, but they're also interested in the challenge itself. So they want to learn more about Adobe Premiere, let's say. And this is a way for me to integrate that into my course and give them some agency over that learning. Because they don't have to do it, it's not a requirement. It's an option. So there's a backstory to the course. Essentially, an evil director has stolen all the files from the company, and their job in the class is to repopulate those files. And they can advance in the company by gaining XP and spending their stock options. So with respect to the gamification, other than the in-course economy, there's weekly challenges that are decided by dice. So there's a history challenge from the weeks before, and there's state-of-the-art challenge from the class of today. And so each week we have a randomized challenge. You could call it a quiz, but it's not really. They're challenges. There's also team presentations within the course, and the teams are required to have a gamification element as part of their presentation, and I give them XP to give away to their classmates as a result of completing challenges. So it's really interesting to see what they come up with respect to that. So again, another way to earn grades or XP that we do in this course. So the bonus package then, you can see the names. Here's how much it costs in stock options, and then their XP enhancement for each of those challenges. So as it gets, the first one is the simplest one that uses only one piece of software. As it gets more advanced in the course, there's more work to do, but you get more for it. And you only can earn 54 stock options in the course total, so you can't do all of them. So it's really set up to work with people who want to complete or work on certain pieces of software or more. The last one uses all of the software, so if they're really interested in working with all the different pieces of software, they can do that for the last one. But it's the most expensive one, but they get the most for it. Okay, plus it also, in order to earn that many stock options, it occurs later in the semester, and so they have more projects and more pressure on them, so it's harder to do. Any questions about how I handle the assignment of XP?
How do students get the stock options? You just give them the maximum amount at the start?
No, they earn stock options for everything they complete in the course. So the major assignments, they earn stock options for. And for the labs and everything they submit, they earn stock options for. And that's all laid out in the grade rubrics.
So how is that different from experience points then?
So the stock options is a secondary economy. Experience points are their main grades, if we want to talk about grades. So stock options, they have to spend on something else extra, like these bonus challenges. Right? That does have an impact on their XP earnings in the end, but they have to buy that. Okay? Not with money, of course. And it's optional. So they can still get an A+ without doing this.
Now, how do you deal with plagiarism in this kind of
Plagiarism?
Exactly, because they can be selling and buying XPs from each other. Is that
so? They can only they could, yeah. But they can. I keep track of all the XPs and stock options, and so in order for them to spend this for now, and we're going to talk about D2L problems. I have a track of that. They have to request one of those challenges, which then I subtract. All right, so I manage the XP and the stock options for them, so they can't trade them and sell them and stuff. That's something that might be interesting to try in another course, is letting them do that. So right now, I've got control of that, so they can't do that very easily. No, they can't do that. Okay. So this is the grading rubric. The total possible number of XP they can earn in this course is 2,300. So I have a lot of points to work with, and having that, that quantity makes it really easy for me to work with awarding XP for all kinds of different things. If somebody does something in class, let's say in the lab, when they help somebody else, they can earn XP for that, just on the fly. For a game environment like this, earning 10 XP is almost as good as earning 100 XP. So you can do that kind of thing. You've got a lot of flexibility as an instructor and as in the lab to award XP for all kinds of different things besides the formal assignments and things like that. So I do that all the time, and they're quite happy to have those extra XP, even when it's 10. So this is just a screenshot from, we have Desire to Learn at Ryerson, and this is what they would see. So the bonus XP, for example, that's just the extra stuff that they earn. So there's always a bonus XP column, so they know that they've been rewarded with XP for different things, and they can track it. Right? So there's the challenges that they do weekly. I call it Defeat the Weekly Boss, the weekly challenge. So we use the language of gaming as well. So we don't just have leaderboards, but we use, we're defeating bosses and we're leveling up and things like that in the course. So we do have a leaderboard because some students really like having the leaderboard, and they will tell me the leaderboard is not right. Something was missed. So they keep track of that. The students interested in that really pay attention to the leaderboard.
Hi, sorry. Okay. How long did it take you to develop? This seems like uber complicated. So,
Sorry.
Basically, sounds also complicated. How long did it take you to develop this?
So it took me one class to start, and I started with all these things, but I've changed it a little bit about how it works, I suppose. And I'm going to show you what I've just done for last semester for another course. So it didn't take me very long. And I got an instructor perspective for you about some of the things that I've done. So these are the D2L widgets that we've made. Getting them to be allowed on the Ryerson D2L has been a nightmare. There's all this administrative, and I understand for security and, you can't be taking student grades away from, it's just, there's a lot of security issues around trying to get third-party widgets allowed at Ryerson's D2L. So we're still working on that. But that's what the leaderboard would look like, and it's an automatic leaderboard. I don't have to do anything by hand. I just have to tell the leaderboard object widget which things should be included in the, which grade columns need to be included in the leaderboard. And so it does all that for me, and it displays on my course. There's an avatar build tool as well that we've made. So students don't have, there's no student numbers or whatever. They have to pick an avatar. So it can either be text or graphics. It doesn't matter. And if they want a graphical avatar, they can make one. Or they can use text. So this is my first perspective. What's happened, and it just sort of dawned on me the last time I taught this course, was we've moved from a grade percent kind of model, one assignment at a time kind of thing, to an earning model. And in business, we like that word, earning. But in gaming, we like that word too. So instead of, I got, 75% on this assignment, we don't talk that way anymore. We talk about oh, I've earned 1,000 XP already in this course. What it's made up of doesn't really matter. So the thinking of the students has changed, and my thinking has changed. And from an instructor perspective, I quite like that. I like this idea of earning XP or earning grades, because I don't have any fights about, oh, I need a 75%, I need a 76%, I got 76%, not 75%. We don't have to worry about that. And the way in which they can earn their grades is hugely flexible. So it gives the students more agency in what they're earning. If they don't hand in one of the big assignments, when they don't hand it in, it's the way it goes. They're just going to miss out on earning those XP. But they can earn those XP in other ways. So that makes it easier as an instructor to teach that. And as I said, because of the large quantity of XP possible in this course, I have a lot of flexibility around giving out XP, giving out grades. If you give somebody 1% in an assignment extra, or the lab is worth only 1%, students resist that, don't they? They don't like that. And there's some rule of thumb that if it's not worth 20%, it's not worth doing. And when you have an XP model, it doesn't have that connotation to it. So, like I said, the D2L widget's been made, but it's not integrated into D2L, so I can't use it in my course. So I maintain an Excel spreadsheet with all the different XP and values and the in-course currency myself. So there's quite a bit of manual work for me to do. So after every class, I spend probably 45 minutes updating the XP and any stock options and things, and the leaderboard. So every week I do that. And that's probably a good habit to be in anyway, but it is the extra bit of work that I do. However, I think it's worth it. It makes having a course like this is more fun for me to teach, and I believe the students are much more engaged, and we have some results around that are in the publications, but there's another way to measure this, I think, for me. So some of the students can get a little bit confused by this XP model, and the ones who are a little confused about that tend not to be gamers or really heavy gamers, more casual gamers. So this notion of earning is a little bit foreign to them. But the ones who are playing video games, which is the majority, they're fine with this idea. They have no problem switching, none at all. So with the ones who are confused, I show them how to calculate percent. They should already know that, but I show them how to do that so they can translate their XP into percent for their different assignments and stuff. With respect to the leaderboard, like I said, some were interested and vigilant about the leaderboard, and checked it all the time. That's what they told me. And some didn't care. So it's okay to have a leaderboard, but you shouldn't just rely on the leaderboard. Now the question is, of course, what is the scalability? I mean, I had small numbers in that class, and I just told you how much work extra I had to do. What happens when you have 150 students and you're trying to do all this kind of work? But I have another question for you. Oh, and a misspelling. So it should say, how were the avatar names generated? That's a multiple choice question. 1, 2, or 3. Okay. So the issue of scalability. And that happened for me last fall when I went from 15 students in the class to 86 in the class. So that's a much bigger number to try and manage. So instead of using XP, I thought I think that this notion of an in-course economy is actually probably the best gamification element that I've played with so far. So I wanted to focus on that to see if I could manage that in a larger class. So Instead of stock options, I use Bitcoins, not real ones, in-course ones is the name of the currency. And again, it was the same thing. They earned Bitcoins for everything that they did in the class. We didn't have an XP model, but I might do that for the next offering of this course. They could earn a maximum of 200 Bitcoins for the course. And for that, instead of buying assignments, because I didn't think I could manage even 50 more assignments to look at, I had them purchase, or the things they could purchase with their Bitcoins was extra time for submitting assignments. So you can see it up there. So a 24-hour extension cost them 40 Bitcoins. Right? 24-hour extension on their final submission, like right at the end, cost them almost all of their Bitcoins. So the idea was that they could consider a planning notion if they thought at the end, they know their course load, I don't know their course load, and what they had to deliver at the end of the course, that they maybe needed an extra day extension, then they would have to save their Bitcoins and everything else had to be turned in on time. What that did for me, and 50% of the students used this. So that's a lot more than before, right? Does that say something about their time management? Maybe. I don't know. But I didn't have to worry about it. So I didn't care why they needed 24 hours. If it was a medical thing, if it was a mental health day, it was family crisis, or they just didn't get organized, I don't care. It doesn't matter. I don't need medical notes. They just buy their extra time. And it doesn't matter why they need it. So from my point of view, I didn't have to worry about telephone calls and sob stories and notes and whatever, all that administrative stuff that I'm not that interested in. So this helped them, I believe, with their course management. So it put agency back onto them rather than me as some police. And like I said, they were using them. Now this, might be a way, might be a place where they can actually trade them or do whatever. If you got extra Bitcoins at the end, you can give them to somebody else. But I haven't decided on that or figured out how to handle that yet. Okay, so any questions about that?
Why did you decide that they have to buy time with TAs?
So at Ryerson, the TA time is incredibly limited. And so, the TA still got paid, but if they needed extra time with the TA, so the TA's time was in the lab. So if they wanted to see the TA, that would have to be outside of the group time. And their projects, their main projects, involved quite a lot of the work that they did in the lab and knowledge that they learned in the lab. They applied it in their final project. And so getting help from the TA was something some of them probably wanted. And the TA didn't have office hours, so they could buy some. All right. I was going to make it for me, but I thought my time was supposed to be part of the course, so I didn't. Any other questions about that? What do you think? They did like it, and they were very happy they didn't have to give me an excuse.
I think it's a really cool idea, but they can give you the excuse anyway.
Yeah, but I didn't care. So I said, well, okay, but you can still buy your, it doesn't have any impact on whether you get an extension or not. You just buy what you have your Bitcoins and just buy it. And then
What were the students supposed to buy?
They mostly bought the 24-hour extension on at least one assignment. All right. So a couple bought the 24-hour extension at the end, but not very many. Most of them were buying time for either submitting a lab late or an in-class assignment late. So they did like having that. At least that's what they said. Okay, so my perspective on this as the instructor is I found students were motivated, they showed up to class, they liked earning XP, even just a little bit of XP. There's my attendance for class, the last semester's class, not so much, but I have to play, they didn't earn XP, so it didn't affect their attendance. I think that the in-course economy in particular gives students more agency over what they're learning and handing in. So they like having that. We all like having agency over things that we do. And this allowed them to participate in that. It cost them, but that's okay. With respect to, interviewing students and assessing students' attitudes and things like that, we did a bunch of that. And it did improve somewhat, but, not anything worth, statistical significance, at least anyway. But what happened, and this is where I think the measures should be, is my reviews improved unbelievably. So I went from being average to being at the very top. And that's not because I changed my teaching, that's for sure. I mean, I've been teaching for 25 years. So that didn't change, really. The topic material didn't change that much. But the students' impression of me sure did. So what does that say about how they understand motivation? Not necessarily showing up to class more, but being more interested in the material, and they assign that to me, to the instructor. Right? And we all know that. And usually it's negative. They have negative grades, they don't like you, you get a negative review. Right? So in this case, it was the opposite. And that was really interesting. A couple of people said they did some gamification work in their classes. Yes? That's a couple of people? Did you find that as well? Anybody? No? Okay. So, it may be because I was more interested in teaching my class, but I don't think so. I think it was because of the way it was organized. And they had that extra agency that they attributed to me as the instructor. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I also found it was more fun to teach these classes when I had more to work with. All right. So here we got another thing for you to do. You can tweet that. So I think that from my point of view as the instructor, I think students were more intrinsically motivated, and I think it's because of the in-course economy, not because of the leaderboard and those badges and things that we did. I think it supported time management or lack of it, and they weren't penalized for that. And I don't know about you, but I hate doing that stuff. I hate penalizing students for late submissions. First of all, it's quite a lot of extra work for tracking, especially if you have a scale that changes by time. So if they hand it in a day late, they get so much % off, or up to a week late and they get 0 or whatever it is. So managing that sort of punitive system doesn't make me feel very good, and it certainly doesn't make the students feel very good. So I don't have to do that anymore, which I like. So it supports their self-efficacy in a much more positive way, and their agency. So the question about how long did it take to develop this? Not very long. Obviously, an in-course economy doesn't take very long to organize. You just have to think about what the rewards are going to be for that, or what students can buy and how much they're going to earn with each earning opportunity, and then how to manage the spending of those. But I'd rather do that than keep track of late assignments, for example. And so, it's really just another course object that you've got to design. And the integration with the LMS, I think, would be a really nice addition to my course and my course offerings so that I don't have so much manual work to do with the Excel spreadsheet. It's okay to do it. It's not a problem. It's just it would be better if it was more automated and I could integrate it better with the LMS so that there's less chance of human error in inputting XP and things like that. Okay, so I think that's enough for me. I'm almost done, right? So there's a number of people that worked on these projects. The Learning and Teaching Office at Ryerson has been a great help. And if you're interested in actually looking at the data with respect to the student attitudes, I'd be happy to send you the publications. Did everybody get their chance to do this? Did we have enough time for that? Okay. Okay.
Usually when playing games, if you make a mistake, there's always a chance to start the game over.
Yep.
Or redeem the mistake you made. Like go back to the point before you made it and try again.
Right.
So how
Yes.
did you deal with that?
I didn't. So that part of gaming I didn't address. I can't, that notion and the leveling up aspect. For me, I haven't quite figured out how to do that yet, but it's on the list. I wanted to get the in-course economy working and understand how much workload it was going to add on to me. But yeah, that's another part that I'd like to do. But yeah, the leveling up, the notion of leveling up is also a difficult notion within a class. I think within a course, the people who did the participatory media to social media course had a better leveling up type of system, but it had no impact on their XP. It just had an impact on what size the chocolate bar was. And I wasn't so interested in that kind of reward system. So how to integrate these kind of things into the class structure where you can earn XP it's something I find it more difficult to figure out how to do it, so it's going to take a little bit more time.
I think I see one more person. Last question. Thank you.
Is there any way to also include XP into like social aspect to it? So like if the students work together in a way or interact in a way, is there a way? Because a lot of games are about relating to people. So
Right.
I wonder if that game aspect is
Absolutely.
implemented.
And I have the ability to earn XP as a helper. So if you help somebody in the lab, for instance, explain something to somebody, you earn XP for that. I did have it more formalized in a previous iteration of the course. So I had that social helper kind of XP award, but I also had the opportunity for them to use trash talk in the challenges, and they were doing that a little bit, but they were scared, I think, to do something like that in the class. They weren't going to get penalized for it, but so right now, XP are awarded if you are if in a social way you are helping somebody else. I'm not a big group person. I don't care for group projects myself. I like individual projects. I am an engineer, and I'm not a management person. And I like students to do individual things, not team things, as much as possible. So therefore, if they operate in a helping way towards others in the class, they earn XP for that, for sure. So that's built into the class as well. And it's the thing about that is I can do it on the fly. I don't have to have a formalized thing for that, because not everybody wants to do that, and I want to respect that. But for those who can and want to, they can earn extra XP for that.